your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the fall!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens, leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. 8.6 beer. Intense by nature. And Locage. If the last time you went to Locage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Locage. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, and I am back on this Thursday, December 22nd. It is 10:01 p.m. Eastern Time, and the Sick Podcast, of course, as I fix my shirt, is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different, as well as these guys, 8.6 beer, intense by nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark, and Lacage, where the Marinaros tonight had Lacage takeout, to tell you the truth. You know that you can do that? They have this great app, by the way, on your phone, and you can order whatever you want. You can reserve a table, any location, and you can take out, deliver, all that stuff. And if the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you go back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you. I am back, and for those of you who were wondering, been a tough couple of days. I was able to escape COVID up until this past week, and this week it hit me for the very first time. And at one point, it hit me pretty hard. And so I almost feel like it's kind of like a miracle that I'm able to do the show tonight. Up until an hour ago, I had like just a terrible headache. But that's subsided. It's still there a little bit, but I want to take this one for the team. And I want to thank Matt O'Hayan for filling in on, when was it? On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I think he filled in 3 days this week. Yeah, that's right. Saturday night, I was working and made my way home from the Bell Center. I did a hit on television, and it was probably about 5:45 p.m. or so. I was in my truck, and I was starting to get the chills, and my body wasn't reacting all that well. So I arrived home for 6 p.m. I took a hot shower, and I went straight to bed. The following day was the World Cup final, and I watched it in bed. I didn't have a lot of strength to get up. I watched it in bed, and as the day progressed, my body started to feel like it got hit by a truck. And I had a lot of general body soreness, as you can imagine. Monday morning, I woke up. I felt I was losing my voice, but I had enough left to do my hit on radio, and I did that. And then as the day went on, I was losing my voice. Then my throat was on fire. Then my throat felt like it was, like in really, really bad shape inside. The headaches got worse, the chills. And then I think it was on Tuesday night. At one point, I had a really tough time breathing. I was just sitting up in my bed and I was watching TV. It was between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. And it's the one moment where I was, I think, most thankful that I actually had sleep apnea, because I used the CPAP machine to give me a little bit of, to help with my breathing for about 4 hours while I was watching television. Usually I wear that to sleep, but I wore that while I was awake. Anyway, I've been getting better and better and better. And today I'm at my best. So hopefully this thing is a thing of the past. I I'm going to test a little bit later on to see if, I'm finally negative. But if not, I hope I will be in the next couple of days or so. But that's it. So that's my story, and I don't want to bore you with that any longer. I want to talk to you about the Habs tonight, and we're going to talk about more than the Habs because there's a lot going on, especially in the city of Montreal. And when I say Montreal, one of the first guys I think about is Stu Cowan of HockeyInsideOut.com and the Montreal Gazette newspaper. Hey, if you think it's cold in Montreal, supposedly it's colder in Dallas.
It is minus 10 here, and it feels like it's about minus 20. And everywhere I've gone with the Canadiens this season, the cold weather has followed me, whether it was Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg. Yesterday in Denver, I went for a walk in the afternoon. It was about 12 degrees Celsius, beautiful day. When we came out of the rink last night, it was minus 26.
Oh, my God.
So it's and the same sort of, I guess, deep freeze has hit Dallas here also. So this is not normal temperatures for Dallas. So this is my first time here, one of the few NHL cities I hadn't been to yet. But it's chilly.
Guess what everyone's talking about back home as far as the Canadiens are concerned?
I'll take it. Let me know. I haven't been home for a while.
Anthony Richard.
So his first goal. And what a goal. I mean, boy, it's rare you see an NHL player blow past two defensemen at center ice like that, like they're standing still, and then go in and make a nice move like he did. It was a real nice move. And he's got, when they called him up, they said they were looking for him to add some speed and some offense, and that's exactly what he did. He's got one more goal now than Joel Armia and Jonathan Drouin and Jake Evans, and that's been a big problem with this team is they've been getting zero offense from their bottom six forwards. So for Richard, you got to be happy for the kid. Here's a kid. He's 26 years old. He only played 2 games in the NHL before joining the Canadiens. He played 4 minutes in one game with Nashville and 7 minutes in another game with Nashville, and that was it. So Marty St. Louis is giving him a chance to show what he can do. And from my dealings with him, he seems like a really nice kid. Happy to see him get his first goal, and hopefully he's the kind of player that the Canadiens can use right now.
I want to get to Drouin and Armia in just a second, but before I do, I'll say this, too. I don't know about you, but I liked Anthony Richard in preseason.
Well, he had that big game. It was the red versus white scrimmage. He had a really good game. He looked good during camp. They didn't have a spot for him right there. He's one of those guys, you get sort of penciled in as a career minor leaguer. And that's sort of what he was when the Canadiens signed them to play for Laval. They had success last season in Laval by getting a lot of local guys, a lot of Quebec guys who were happy to come back home and play at home and performed really well and went pretty far in the playoffs. And they signed him, I think, for that reason. But one thing the Canadiens have done with this new management team is if guys show that they can play and they deserve an opportunity, they get it. Arbor Xhekaj, who thought Arbor Xhekaj was going to make this team? Yeah. He made the team over Justin Barron, the guy that they traded Arturi Lehkonen to get. So the Canadiens, this new management team has shown that if guys perform well and work hard, they're going to get a chance. And Marty St. Louis spoke in Arizona this week. He said that sends a good message to the guys down in Laval that they know if they work hard and perform, they might get a chance. And it also sends a message to the guys of the Canadiens. If you don't, you might lose your spot to one of these kids from Laval. So it's a good situation the Canadiens have set up right now. Yeah, I remember in training camp in Brassard, you and I, we were standing next to each other at one point on one particular day, and Richard was on the ice. I really liked him. His speed was apparent. He was tenacious. He was in on the forecheck. And just the way he played, his speed, his pace, his hunger, I said, you know what? This kind of guy that's energy player, this kind of guy that Marty St. Louis is going to want on his team because this team's going to skate. I'm not going to say I was shocked that he didn't make it because the odds were against him. But I'm happy he got his shots, Stu. I think it's long overdue. I think out of all the players in Laval, he's been the guy. At the same time, as much as I was happy that he scored, you know how this city is, right? Ryan Poehling plays his first game with the Canadiens. He scores 3 goals and another one in the shootout. And all of a sudden, expectations are high with the fan base. When you're a French-Canadian player, expectations are very, very high, obviously, with the French media. And, so much so that some are going as far as to say that, hey, let's put Anthony Richard on the first line with Suzuki and Caulfield. By the way, not to say it's not a good idea, because it very well could be, but, the odds always say that when a guy's 26, Stu, and he's only got
11 minutes of ice time at the National Hockey League level, combined over 2 games, that chances are he's not an NHLer. It's not impossible that he is. For his sake, I hope that he is, Stu, because like you said, seems like a really likable guy and stuff like that. But
it happens. When I spoke with him in Arizona, maybe 5 minutes, just one-on-one talking with him, and he said when he first signed with the Canadiens, his parents were concerned. He's from Trois-Rivières, and his parents know the pressure, not just playing for the Canadiens, but also playing in Laval. There's a lot more media covering Laval than in most other AHL cities. So his parents were concerned, but he said he wanted that. He wanted to have that little chip on his shoulder. He wanted to have the pressure of coming back and playing at home. But you're right, he's a 26-year-old guy. He had 2 games in the NHL. As I mentioned earlier, you get that tag of being a career minor leaguer. The thing I really like about him is he uses his speed all over the ice. He uses his speed when he doesn't have the puck. He's quick on the back check. He's quick on the forecheck. And when I asked him about this sort of style of play, he said he has sort of 2 types of games he can play. If you put him in the bottom 6, he'll be an in-your-face, stir things up, energy type of guy. And if you put him with good players on a power play, he has the offensive skill that he can play there also. And we saw that offensive skill in that goal he scored. That was a goal scorer's goal.
Yeah.
But again, expectations have to stay calm for him. Marty St. Louis, I missed this part because I was speaking I was doing an interview with Cole Caulfield when Richard started his interview with the French guys. But Luc Jolina was telling me last night that when they were talking, Marty St. Louis basically told Richard, play your game. Don't play the game to please your coach. Don't play a game to please me. Play your game. That's why we called you up. We want you to play your game. And how many coaches are going to tell a kid that? And he had said that what a relief that was to him just to go out and play his game, because he said maybe in Nashville he was trying to play to please the coach as opposed to just playing the way he wants to play. And it reminded me when I spoke with Jordan Harris when he was first called up, when he came up from Northeastern University, and he said St. Louis told him, you're going to make 3 or 4 mistakes every game. Don't worry about it. Go out there, play your game. You're going to make your mistakes. We'll deal with the mistakes. He doesn't want players playing afraid to make mistakes. And it's why we see them scoring a lot of goals. It's why we see them sometimes giving up leads, because they're playing more of an open style of play. But it's been fun to watch. And for a guy like Richard, this is the opportunity that, as he said, mentally the last couple of years were really hard for him. You start realizing that I'm maybe never going to play another game in the NHL. Then you get that chance. Yeah. Not only that chance, but that chance with the team you grew up cheering for. It's funny. I'd ask him, I said, there's no relation to Maurice and Henri. He says, no. Yeah. He says, when I was a kid growing up, one of my brother's friends used to call me Maurice because I was the best player in his group of friends. So when he did make the team, the buddy texted him and said, finally, Maurice is on the Canadiens. So it's, as I said, it's a nice story. It's a good story. And it'd be really nice to see the kid. And the other thing, Marc-Antoine Gaudin of The Athletic asked Marty St. Louis last night if he sees comparisons or similarities between Richard and Paul Byron. And he says, yeah, he does. And you can see them, that burst of speed, that ability to get open when there is a spot, working hard all over the ice. So, Paul Byron was an
different size, player. Though, obviously, right? Different size.
But if you want to make a comparison, people are the pressure on him. Paul Byron's a comparison for this guy. Paul Byron's a guy who can be a good forward liner. He can play up in a top 6 if you need him to. But he's just a guy who generates, he buzzes all over the ice and creates havoc. And if he gets a scoring chance, he can score. So I think that's the type of player that Richard can be for the Canadiens.
I remember when Matthew Darche got called up to the Canadiens, and it's not to compare Matthew Darche to Anthony Richard, because obviously they're different players with a different skill set. But in the end, I think they're both, role players on a team. But Darche was such a likable guy and such an honest worker, and he wore the Canadiens jersey with a lot of pride. And I think in that respect, Richard's going to be similar to him.
Yeah, and the other thing Marty St. Louis mentions very often is he always says, I want everyday guys on this team, meaning he wants guys who don't have big egos, guys who basically aren't jerks, right? Guys that are everyday type of people that people can relate to and get along in the room. And they have a lot of them in this locker room. I'm around this team on a daily basis, and it's a real breath of fresh air in the locker room with these young guys. Yeah, they're happy to be there. They're polite kids to be around. They just seem like good people, and they're smart hockey players too. You look at the 4 rookies playing on defense; they're really smart. You watch them with the puck. Kovacevic is a smart hockey player. Caden Goulet is a smart hockey player. Jordan Harris is a smart hockey player. They're also smart guys when you talk to them off the ice. They're just they've got a group of good people in this locker room now. And I think moving forward, you obviously need talent, and they got a lot of talent too. Caden Goulet, Jordan Harris, Arbor Jack, I think his talent is underestimated. He's a good hockey player. But building this team moving forward, it's a young group of guys that have talent. They seem to be just good guys. They get along together really well, it seems. And there's sort of a family atmosphere that Marty St. Louis has created in the locker room. And as I said, from what it was in the past, it's just a really nice breath of fresh air being around this team now.
You brought up a couple of names before. One was Jonathan Drouin. One was Joel Armia. The reason being is that they don't have any goals, and Anthony Richard gets called up in his second game. He's already got a goal, one more than them. Drouin's been good since he came back. Drouin, if he would have scored that goal last night in overtime, we're talking about an end-to-end rush there.
He had a chance earlier, and he should have shot. He tried to pass to Dadonov. He should have shot the puck, and that's one of the things with Jonathan since he's come here. He doesn't shoot the puck enough. He's always looking to make that pass. And if he would shoot the puck and be a little bit more selfish, he'd have more goals. But, Jonathan Drouin has worked his butt off the last few games. The goals haven't come. The offense hasn't come. He's making a lot of money. People look at the points, and the Canadiens were paying him. That contract that Marc Bergevin gave him was to put points on the board. It hasn't been happening, but it's hard to criticize a player when he's working his butt off. And that has been a criticism of Drouin in the past. There were games where he didn't. But he's really been working hard recently. He's had some solid back checks. He's been more aggressive in puck battles than he has been in the past. He's maybe realizing, this could be his last season in the NHL, right? He's a free agent after this season.
Yeah.
How much interest is there going to be in him with the way he's played the last little while, the injuries he's had, everything else? So he's working hard. I can't, when a player's working hard, it's hard to knock him. Jake Evans has been working hard. The goals haven't come. Dadonov is working hard. Just the game's gotten too quick for him. He's, one of those guys that gets old fast. He's one of those guys. The thing that drives me crazy with Armia watching him is that he doesn't look like he's working hard that often. After the morning skate,
Stu, I can't take him anymore. I was going to get to him.
After the morning skate yesterday, I don't know if you read the story I had on Hockey Inside Out or Montreal Gazette, but Marty St. Louis had about a 15-minute conversation one-on-one with Armia after the optional morning skate yesterday. And when I asked him about it afterwards, and it was all positive. He was telling Armia, have fun, enjoy this. You don't want to end your NHL career and look back and you didn't have fun. St. Louis said it's a grind, but you got to enjoy it. He's tried to give him a confidence boost, like just go out there and have fun and play. And Armia goes out there, he doesn't get a shot on goal.
But Stu, who do you say that to, right? When someone loves the game and someone has fun playing the game, you don't have to tell them to go out there and enjoy it and have fun because they love it and they enjoy it. You say that to someone when you have doubts whether or not they love the game.
Well, they're trying to get something out of Armia. And, he is who he is at this point, right? I don't think he's going to change. I think the Canadiens are playing him in the power play. St. Louis is giving a pep talk because they want to I think they just want to get rid of him.
Of course.
They can't get rid of him unless he starts doing something. Right now, they're stuck with him. They got 2 more years at $3.4 million. Just a horrible contract that Marc Bergevin gave him. And that contract paved the way to Arturi Lehkonen leaving because Lehkonen contract talks coming up. He's going to want more than Joel Armia, and rightfully so. He's worth a lot more. They can't afford to pay Lehkonen and Armia that kind of money. So Bergevin picked the wrong guy. You should have locked up Lehkonen and let Armia go, but that didn't happen. And Armia he has talented teases. I think it was Mike Johnson had that line on TSN. Talented teases. I watch him in practice, and my God, he's got the size, the skill, the shot. We saw him in the playoffs when, playing on that line with Stahl and Corey Perry. You couldn't get the puck off what he wanted. But then that's what got him the contract, and then it just disappeared. And I think I might have told you this on the podcast.
That's what the ladies say about me, by the way, Stu. I have talented teases.
There you
talented teases.
But I've joked before, and I think Corey Perry maybe threatened to stick him in practice if he didn't skate. Because he worked hard during that playoff run. And then Corey Perry leaves, and Joel Armia goes back to being Joel Armia. But at this point, I think the Canadiens are just like to move on from him. He's one of those players that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon got stuck with. He wasn't the guy that they signed. And I honestly think they don't know what to do with him. They're trying everything. Marty St. Louis, that conversation with him yesterday after the morning skate, just try and give him something to maybe light a fire under him. Instead of giving him a kick in the butt, they give him Marty gave him a pat on the back and told him to go out and have fun. And it just nothing came of it. And it's and at this point in Armia's career, there's reasons why he was a 16th overall pick by the Buffalo Sabres. I know one scout told me at the World Juniors he was a stud. He was dominant. He looked amazing, and he just hasn't been able to. I've written this before. he's a man of very few words when you talk to him. He's one of the worst interviews you'll ever have. I think he's a little shy. As I've written, he's a big, nice, shy guy who plays hockey like a big, nice, shy guy.
And that's not good.
And that's not good.
So far, this road trip, which saw the Canadiens open up in Arizona on Monday, play in Colorado yesterday, will be in Dallas tomorrow night. Then they'll have 4 days off for the Christmas holidays. Then they're in Tampa Bay on Wednesday of next week. Next Thursday, they visit the Panthers in Florida. And then the following Saturday afternoon, that's going to be on the 31st, they're going to be playing the Capitals in Washington. On the Tuesday, January 3rd, they're going to be in Nashville versus the Predators. I didn't think that this road trip would see the Canadiens have 3 points after 2 games. I could have believed a win in Arizona. Mind you, they could have easily lost that game.
Well, but the reason they have 3 points.
that's exactly what I'm getting at. And, Stu, if I could talk to Kent Hughes or Jeff Gordon, and we can have an off-the-record conversation, I would tell them, guys, I think I understand everything you're trying to accomplish until I take a look at the goaltending situation. You guys are trying to rebuild. Everyone knows that. You're not really coming out and saying it, but everyone knows that. Jeff Gordon made it apparent to me on the podcast about a month ago when I said, hypothetically, you're in a playoff spot or a couple of points out 1 week before the deadline. Are you buying or selling? And he didn't want to answer the question. Mm-hmm. And for me, if the goal is to make the playoffs and not rebuild, the answer is obvious. You're buying. Because he didn't give me an answer, it led me to believe that he didn't give me an answer because he knew he was going to be quoted on what he said, and he knew a lot of people weren't going to like the answer, which would have been, we're going to sell. So he very diplomatically didn't answer the question and skated around it, right?
Well, they've been on it. They're rebuilding. I mean, there's no doubt they're rebuilding.
Perfect. But here's what I don't understand. You want to rebuild. You want to get as good a pick as possible, right? Mm-hmm. Your goalies are giving you a chance to pick up points in every game. I don't understand, as much as I like Jake Allen, and I know the argument's going to come up, but if you put a goalie who's not that good in nets, it's going to burn the kids and burn their confidence and burn this and burn that. But, I mean, finish at the bottom of the standings and worry about everything else after. Jake Allen almost stole 2 points last night. He stole a point. He almost stole 2. I don't know, man. I don't get that one.
To me, Tony, you go out and you try and win games. With young guys, you don't want to get look at what's happening in Buffalo. Look what's happening in Edmonton. You get all these top picks. It doesn't always work because you get a losing attitude in the room. We saw what a losing attitude does to a locker room last year with the Canadiens, right?
Can I
guys
counter?
Don't care anymore.
Can I counter?
The guys don't care anymore. The goalies they have now give them a chance to win. And that's what you want, young team, when you're rebuilding. You want to have a chance to win. You don't want what we saw last year when the Canadiens lost 7-1 to New Jersey. Sam Montembeault got run over by Zach Kassian. Nobody did anything. That's bad. Here's
my counter, Stu.
That's worse. That's worse than winning games. And maybe, and it's a draft lottery too. I mean, because you finished last doesn't guarantee you're going to get the lottery pick. It did last. The Canadiens got it last year, but it doesn't.
I hear you, Stu. Here's my counter, though. The Penguins were terrible for years, and they too would have that. You know what? It's not good when you have that kind of culture that they were terrible for years. But rebuilding saw them win 3 Stanley Cups. I get it. They had one.
But they also got Mario Lemieux when they tanked, and you were guaranteed the number 1 pick when you finished last.
They won the lottery with Sidney Crosby.
No, yeah, but going back to Mario Lemieux, that was the ultimate tank job. There was never a bigger tank job.
No. But I'm not talking about those. Okay, so the Penguins won the Cup in '91 and '92 with Mario, and then in the early 2000s, okay, even with Mario on the team, I believe they tanked and they went with a rebuild. They got rid of a bunch of veteran players. They went with a rebuild. They did the rebuild. They were bad for several years. And then they ended up drafting Marc-Andre Fleury, number 1, Evgeny Malkin, number 2, Jordan Staal, number 2, They win the lottery with Crosby at number 1. They go on to win 3 Stanley Cups. The Chicago Blackhawks were terrible for years. And then they end up drafting Kane at 1 and Taves at 3. And then they turn it around and they end up winning 3 Stanley Cups, I believe. I understand your point.
You don't have to tank to rebuild. To follow that up, the Canadiens have Kirby Dach, number 3 overall pick already.
Yes.
Right? They have Nick Suzuki, a first-round pick. They have Cole Caulfield, a first-round pick.
Yes.
Goulet, a first-round pick. They have a lot of young talent already. They're far ahead in a rebuilding process to what the Penguins were, even when they got.
I'll even add to that, Stu, to cement your point. I'll even add to that.
You got Justin Barron in Laval, a first-round pick. They have a ton of first-round picks already, as opposed to tanking to get one guy. Everybody seems to think Connor Bedard's going to come into the NHL, and that's going to be it. Well, people thought the same thing about Alex Lafreniere, who's like a third-line winger right now in New York. There's never a guarantee for an 18-year-old coming into the NHL what he's going to do. Connor Bedard is an exceptional talent. I think he'll be a really good hockey player. Connor McDavid's the best hockey player in the NHL. Have the Edmonton Oilers really done anything with him? No. So, to me, rebuilding doesn't.
He's a joy to watch, though, Stu.
He is, but
he's a joy to watch.
Rebuilding to me is about smart management, and the Canadiens have smart management right now.
Yeah,
I'll 2 first-round picks. I might get another one if Sean Monahan can get healthy and move forward. So they're piling up all these young 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old kids. Instead of having one kid, so-called superstar number 1 draft pick, they're going to have about 7 or 8 guys who are first or second round picks, all around the same age group, all with manageable salaries for a couple of years, which frees up some money for free agents. There's be a lot of money coming off the cap this summer.
Yeah.
So there's different ways to go about rebuilding. And if you can rebuild while maintaining a winning attitude and a winning atmosphere in the locker room, to me, that's the way to go. And
I'll actually say something to support your point. Not only do they have a lot of first-round picks, you can make an argument that when you look now, Caden Goulet should have been a lot better than 16th, and Caulfield should have been a lot better than 15th, and Suzuki should have been a lot better than 13th. However, Kirby Dach's still questionable at number 3. I mean, we don't even know if he's going to develop into a number 2 center yet.
He's a Kirby Dach's the way he has improved, or the way he has played. I mean, remember that phone call the Kings did that video after the draft, and they had Kent Hughes on the phone with Kirby Dach, and he says, "You're going to love our coach." And Kirby Dach has been really good. He's a smart hockey player. That's one of the reasons he can play with Caulfield and Suzuki. He can think the game as fast as they do. That was a great pickup. He's 21 years old. People forget he's 21 years old. He was playing in the NHL when he was 18 years old. They've accumulated Caden Goulet is 20 years old. Jordan Harris is 22, I think, or 20. These kids are young and they're good. Yeah. And they're getting lots of ice time. They have 4. I mean, how many teams in the NHL could play 4 rookie defensemen and be a 500 team in the NHL today? Not a lot. And the Canadiens have done that this season. The 4 rookie defensemen have been the biggest surprise of all. I mean,
we 2 goalies who are not known as number 1s.
No, we knew. Well, Sam Monta was night and day from last year. I mean, he played through that painful wrist injury last year, and that was one of the reasons he told me every time he made a blocker save, he was worried how much it was going to hurt. That's a tough way to play goalie. He's been great this season. Jake Allen's been a little hot and cold, but he's been more good than bad. And as I said, what a waiver pickup Kovacevic was. And that's Kent Hughes knowing him a little bit from his university background and knowing university people around the game who had seen this kid. And he's a really one of the smartest guys you'll talk to in the locker room. Really intelligent guy, really nice guy. His teammates love him. Smart on the ice, as I was mentioning early. They have all these young guys, and they've been a fun team to watch. And they've been, as I mentioned earlier, they've been a fun team to be around. And they're building something here. And as I said, smart management. I'll take a smart management team over a management team that comes in and says we're going to tank any day of the week. In the NHL with a draft lottery, there's no guarantees what's going to happen in the draft. Even if you get the number 1 pick, there's no guarantee. Alex Lafreniere, Nail Yakupov, fail for Nail. It doesn't always work out.
But Stu, if I can, I hear you, but Connor Bedard's not in the same stratosphere as Connor
Bedard's also
Yakupov and Lafreniere are not in the same stratosphere.
Connor Bedard has amazing talent. Connor Bedard is also 5'8", and realize not sure his size. He's not a big kid. Cole Caulfield
is the Canadiens coach. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Exactly. No, but I'm just saying there's no guarantees on 18-year-old kids coming into the NHL how they're going to do. You look at Slafkovsky coming in. Canadiens thought he was the best 18-year-old player in the world. They drafted him number 1. The NHL game looks too fast for him. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't send him to the World Juniors. I think they should have. It's a big jump going from an 18-year-old going from playing junior hockey to playing for the NHL. I don't care how good you are. I mean, Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid are really exceptions. They're bigger. They're also bigger kids than what Connor Bedard is or what Cole Caulfield was. And Cole Caulfield struggled his first season. Some of that's on Dominic Ducharme, obviously. Some of it is just on a kid coming in and playing in the NHL. It's not easy. So, again, I think the way Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes and Marty St. Louis are all on the same page about how they want to rebuild this team. Yeah. Marty St. Louis put it best. We want to get better every day. And to me, you don't want to get worse. You don't want to get worse in tank. You want to get better every day. How much better? Maybe it's just little baby steps, which is what, the Canadiens, somebody was asking me today, do you think they'll make the playoffs? And I said, no, because they need to go on about a 6 or 7 game winning streak to get into a solid playoff spot. They're not good enough to do that. But they're not going to lose 6 or 7 in a row. I mean, that win the other night in Arizona was huge. They'd lost 3 in a row. You're going on first of 7 games on the road. Remember what happened last year? 3 losses turned into 4, which turned into 6, which turned into 8, which turned into players not wanting to have, Josh Anderson, we're not having fun coming to the rink anymore. You want these young guys to have fun coming to the rink, and they are having fun coming to the rink. Win or lose. We're putting up a fight, and to me, I think they're going about it the right way.
So I'm going to say this about Slafkovsky. I would have sent him to Laval some time ago. And it's not because he's not a good player, because obviously he is. But because the game is so fast and he has that habit, which he hasn't been able to break yet, of either holding on to the puck too long or not having his head up, and he's getting hit.
I worry he's going to get hurt.
Keeps on getting hit and hit and hit. And I'm sitting at home on my leather sofa, which is about 20 years old now, reclinable. It's gone a long while, but I think it needs to be replaced. Okay. I'm sitting there and I'm watching him get hit and hit and hit. And I'm saying to myself, it's a matter of time that this guy is going to get hurt. It's going to be a concussion. It's not going to be a good one. And it could end up affecting, the rest of his season or the next 2 years, or maybe even longer. And look, I'm a worrywart. Okay. I'm always more negative than positive when it comes to that stuff. I don't know why. I wish I wouldn't. But for me, it's so obvious that he has a bad habit. It needs to be fixed. And until it's fixed, the fact that he's playing in the fastest league in the world, it's not conducive. It's a double whammy. It's not good. Like, there's nothing good that's going to come out of it. And I don't understand why they don't send them to a league that is slower so that the chances of that happening are less likely. I don't understand.
The game's moving too fast for him, especially in his own end. When the puck comes around the boards to him, he's on a smaller rink. The game is quicker. He's just not reacting quick enough. He's 18 years old. He's been rocked hard at least half a dozen times this year. And the last 2 games, he just missed getting rocked in both games by a hair. And it reminds me a little bit of Eric Lindros, who would skate with his head down. And part of the reason was when Eric Lindros was 16 years old, he was already like 200 pounds. And anybody who did hit him would bounce off him. And I think it's a similar thing with Slafkovsky. When he did get hit, whatever levels he played before, the guys would bounce off him. The NHL, they don't bounce off him. He goes down. Thankfully, he's as big, so the hit isn't as hard as what we saw what happened to Cole Caulfield when he ran into the Calgary player. But the game just seems to be moving too quick for him. And it's sort of like baby steps. Okay, so he played the bigger ice service. I understand why they started him the season in Montreal. You want to give the kid a taste. You want to see what he can do. You want to see how things work out. But to me, at this point, it would have made sense to me to send him to the World Juniors, like what Seattle did with Shane Wright. Have him go down there, and if he dominates down there, it might give him some confidence. And maybe you do bring him back up for 4 or 5 more games and see if there's you notice some improvements there. And if you don't, then you send him down to Laval. But I worry that, I think that one of these days he's going to get nailed with one of these hits. And, the hit Caulfield took, there was nothing he could do. He got caught in the tracks. There was no way he could avoid that. But if you watch Caulfield play, he's brilliant at avoiding hits. One of the best players I ever saw at being able to avoid hits was PK Subban. Nobody had a bigger target on his back than him when he was on the ice. Guys tried to run through the boards. Nobody could ever get a clean shot at him because he was so good at his little spin moves, being aware where he was on the ice, not putting himself in vulnerable positions. Slafkovsky puts himself in vulnerable positions.
St. Louis was very good at that, by the way.
Well, had to be. All the little guys are. I mean, you can't make the Paul Byron, Brendan Gallagher, all those. You, at that size, you don't get to the NHL.
Matt Snaslin
Jr. If you don't learn how to protect yourself, they have to learn how to protect themselves at a young age. It's a must. Slafkovsky never had to learn how to protect himself. Eric Lindros never had to learn how to protect himself. They were men when they were boys playing against boys, and guys would bounce off of them. So now he's in a league with men, and everybody's even the guys who aren't 6'3", 200 pounds are strong and they hit hard. And he's, I've seen him get rocked. And there's a few times in the press box I've seen him like, you can see the hit coming and he doesn't see it. And you're sort of like, oh man. And then either he doesn't see it and he gets rocked, or maybe at the last second he sees it, but he doesn't seem to be aware of the danger zones on the smaller NHL rink at the speed of the game played. And it's a concern. And, on Twitter, people say, you're so critical of the kid. I like Slafkovsky. He's a really nice kid. I mean, we met him the day before the draft. Remember, Tony? There,
we hit it
really
off.
Good personality, nice, coachable. A lot to like about him. I think he's going to be a good player moving forward. I still think Shane Wright's going to be a better player down the road in the NHL. But I understand why the Canadiens took Slafkovsky. But I think they're rushing him a little bit too much, in my opinion. I think. As I said, I would have liked to have seen them send him to the World Junior Championship at least.
Stu, who was the first one and the only one when we had a chance to talk to them at the Montreal Science Center there at the Old Port that got in between both of them and said, let's take a picture?
Yeah, that was
see how many views I got on that one? Listen, I would have sent them to the World Juniors. I'm with you. Regardless of what he would have done, I would have sent them to the American Hockey League and to the Laval Rocket right after that. And my plan would have been to keep him there and to bring him back by the end of the season, maybe play the last 4 or 5 games of the season, which is your message to the kid, we're finishing the season with you. You'll be on this team next year. That's the way I would have handled it, but there's a lot more smarter people than me working for the Canadiens right now. We'll see what happens. You talked about the type of players that the Canadiens want to bring here. And some of the types of players that they want to bring here are local players. That's why they went out and they got Mike Matheson. There are some local players who want to play in Montreal, right? They want to come home.
Yep.
On that note, I'm wondering if you heard the rumor brought forward by Max Truman of Dans les Coulisses and BPM Sports 91.9 FM, who hosts a show with George Larac Monday to Friday between 11 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. Did you hear who he said the Canadiens are interested in?
No, I did not. I've been in Denver.
Yeah. He came out and he said, I have it on good information that the Canadiens are interested in a young goalie. And then he came out and he said, I've been told that young goalie is Devin Levi. And so if you think about it, Devin Levi from DDO, Quebec.
University player also, if I'm not mistaken.
Plays at Northeastern with Jack Hughes and Riley Hughes, both of Kent Hughes' boys. So Kent, I would imagine, has seen him play very often. As many times as he's seen his kids play, he's probably seen Devin play. He's got great intel on that team. Obviously, he doesn't have to go any more further than just talking to his boys. And Devin Levi is a former 7th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
212th overall pick by the Florida Panthers. We know that he was great at the World Junior Championships a couple of years ago. The Buffalo Sabres acquired him and a first-round pick in the 2022 draft. Pardon me.
Still can't hear you there, Tony. I don't know if...
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I had hit the cough button. As you can see, I'm not fully recovered yet, but I thought I was I was going to try and gut it out, but anyway, it's okay. Devin Levi, I was saying, acquired by the Buffalo Sabres in return for Sam Reinhart and that deal that went down. But what do you think it would take to get Devin Levi from the Buffalo Sabres, and would acquiring him make sense for you?
It would. I mean, speculating if the Sabres would probably want another goalie if they're giving up one. I don't know if they'd have Caden Primo or Montembeault or what would be involved in that. But one thing, Kent Hughes, I mentioned Kovacevic before. He's a guy that he knew through his university connections. I think he puts as much emphasis on the type of person a player is as what kind of player they are. I mean, obviously you look at the talent, but I think he wants, as Marty St. Louis says, the everyday type of guy. I don't know Levi at all. I mean, I know about him. I don't know him. But it wouldn't shock me. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if that was part of it. I mean, Caden Primo, also, and goalies are weird, right? We all know that. I mean, some develop late, some develop early, some never develop. Caden Primo has been one of those guys, been great in the AHL and looked like a deer in the headlights every time he's come up to the NHL. Although in his defense, he wasn't playing behind a very good team last year when he got called up either. The thing with the goaltending situation, somebody asked me about this the other day also. Why don't the Canadiens go out and get a goalie now? Well, they don't need to get a goalie now. They're what they have now is fine. I think Kent Hughes, as much as Carey, I think he would probably like to get rid of Carey Price's contract the way you got rid of Weber's, just to have that, wash your hands of that. That you don't need it, even though he's on long-term injured reserve. They're not in a rush for the goalie situation. Like it's not at the top of their priority list for Kent Hughes. Going back to what you were saying earlier, they want goalies that can give them a chance to win every night. They don't need a guy who's going to stand on his head every night for this team. So I think there's other things that are much more at the top of Kent Hughes' list moving forward. We're seeing what he can get at the trade deadline. Hopefully Sean Monahan can get healthy and stay healthy. That's his biggest concern. If he can, do they get a first-round pick? Maybe. Would they get a second-round pick? I would think almost certainly.
Yeah.
And then, how much money is going to get freed up in the offseason? You got Drouin coming off the books, Dadonov coming off the books, Byron, even though he's on long-term injured reserve, that comes off the books. They're going to have some money to spend. They're also going to have to sign Cole Caulfield. He's going to take a chunk of that money. They'd love to move Drouin and Armia, as we were speaking earlier. So there's a lot of other things he needs to do. And then I think once he knows where he is with the salary cap, once he has a better feel of what's going on, Jake Allen signed for 2 more years. There's your security goalie right there. And also a goalie that if you do at the trade deadline, if there's a team, that has goalie injuries and is looking for an experienced NHL goalie or desperate for one, you might get more than you would expect for Jake Allen if they wanted to move him. So there's he's got a lot of moving balls. He's juggling a lot of balls right now with Kent Hughes. But the goalie thing, I think, is not near the top of his list. And I don't think it should be right now. Just move forward with Montembeault and Jake Allen for now, and then figure that thing out after you figure a few other things out first.
Stu, a shout out to Playground. They have over 600 machines, poker tournaments, and Playground casino games, daily promotions, and unmatched customer service. Why go anywhere else? Located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. You're watching the podcast right now, either on YouTube Live, on Twitter Live, or on Facebook Live. If you're not watching on YouTube, subscribe to our channel and tell your friends about it. Hit the like button. It goes a long way with us, and you can message us SICK, S-I-C-K. It's our way of feeling the love. If you end up listening tomorrow, the day after, on Google, Apple, or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. We will appreciate it. As I cough again. All right. I want to move on because there's some shaking and baking going on with the Montreal teams. And I'm not just talking about the Canadiens here. I'm talking about the Montreal Alouettes in the Canadian Football League and CF Montreal, of course, in Major League Soccer. Let's start with the Montreal Alouettes, who a couple of days ago named Jason Moss as their new as their new head coach, former quarterback. He had a chance to coach Trevor Harris. You can hold on a second. You can tell how much I'm suffering now, but anyway, it's okay. I keep saying it's okay, but it's not. Okay, so Jason Moss had a chance to work with Trevor Harris. He knows him well. He had a chance to work with Danny Machocha. He knows him well, and he's the coach. Your thoughts?
Well, Herb Zurkowski is our CFL expert at the Gazette. I follow it from more of a distance. Jason Moss seems a good hire as a coach. I mean, he has a history with Danny Machiosa going back to Edmonton. He has experience as a head coach, knows the league well. One of the things with the CFL, it's like a revolving door of just this coach. Every player has played for like 3 different teams or 4 different teams, and every coach has coached 3 or 4 different teams. That's just the way that league works. So Machiosa knows him. I mean, he also has the Mario Cecchini thing now. He's no longer going to be president. I was following Herb on Twitter today, and he was sort of feuding a little bit with Gary Stern. And Cecchini was basically pushed out the door, it seems like, although the team saying it was a mutual departure.
That's not mutual. That's not
mutual. No. I mean, it's
not mutual. And it's BS. I mean, Mario Cecchini, great job as president of the Montreal Alouettes. Here's an organization that needed some help, needed some stability. The sponsorship dollars under Cecchini's watch increased. Season tickets increased. Individual ticket sales increased. Fan engagement. The business community got more involved. Here's Herb's tweet. Folks, don't believe for a minute the decision to move on from Al's Montreal president Mario Cecchini was mutual. Gary Stern.
Sorry, what thing about
bad feelings with the media, but Herb, you know nothing about what you're printing. The business with Mario was private, and I will leave it at that. I have too much respect for Mario to have you drop his name through this. But later on, Mario Cecchini, do we have it?
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
I never quit in the middle of the game.
Herb,
shouldn't go there. Let's leave it at that.
Nobody covers the CFL better than Herb. And Herb is old school, the days of Red Fisher. He doesn't deal in rumors or speculation. If Herb writes something or says he knows something, he knows it. Take it to the bank. That's just the way Herb operates, the way he always has operated. It's part of the reason why he's maybe not the favorite person with the Alouettes, because they wonder where he gets his scoops and where he gets his information. But I can't remember Herb ever being wrong on one of these things. So they didn't want Cecchini there anymore, and just say it. Just come out and say we're moving in a different direction. Thank you for what you've done, and we've decided we're going to move in a different direction. And we don't want Cecchini's not our guy moving forward. I don't know what's wrong with just being open and honest about that. And for Gary Stern, I don't think an owner, I don't know, whatever the percentage he has of the team now, gains much by getting on Twitter and getting in feuds or stuff like that. Make your business decision and let your decisions speak for themselves. I don't know what he's looking to gain from that. If Herb wrote it and he said Cecchini backed him up, so that speaks to Herb's credibility when it comes to anything like that.
It was difficult to watch the press conference introducing Jason Moss a couple of days ago because you can tell, like, Danny Machiosa was distraught, like with Mario being let go. Like, you can just tell. They were very close. They worked closely together. They were getting this done together, and you could tell that Danny's distraught. You can just tell. And Gary Stern, a lot of people like following him on Twitter because, he's very engaging in that respect. He'll go back and forth with fans. But Gary's just not a fit for Danny and Mario. And with all due respect to Gary, he's just not a fit to be the owner of this team. This team should have been sold to Quebec interests when it was sold. The commissioner, Randy Ambrosi, he screwed up, man.
They had good Quebec groups. They had good Quebec groups with money involved too to purchase the team. And
Eric Lapointe's group.
There was a couple of groups involved there, and for whatever reason they didn't. They decided not to go that way. Local ownership, I think, especially with the Alouettes, is really important. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Alouettes were just as big or almost as big as the Canadiens in this city.
Wow.
My 8th or 9th birthday, I remember my parents giving me a choice. I could get an Alouettes jacket, a Canadiens jacket, or an Expos jacket for my birthday. And I chose an Alouettes jacket. And I found it years ago in my mom's basement. I still have it, the green and red one, the old one.
Yeah.
The Alouettes were huge. I remember going to the Autostat and Sonny Wade and all those guys.
Peter Della
Riva. I can name you more guys off the top of my head from the 1970s Alouettes than I could from today's Alouettes. And guys also stayed for a long time back then. As I mentioned earlier, I think every player in the CFL has played for almost every team. I think that's one of the problems with creating a fan base and support is that you never know who's playing for who. You turn on the game. Wasn't he with Hamilton last year? Didn't he play last time? I thought he was playing for Calgary. The players just keep, and the coaches just keep revolving around. But it's sad for me to see what's happening with the Alouettes and even with I always call them the Impact. Still is the CF Montreal. I guess you're going to get to that later. But for the Canadiens, we're talking earlier about how the Canadiens, like the management, I think they're right in the right path. I think they're doing everything correctly since Gorton and Hughes and St. Louis came over. The first step to doing that was Jeff Molson stepping away or taking a step back and bringing in Jeff Gorton. Jeff Molson was basically the director of hockey operations, right? Even though he didn't have that title, he was a guy that Bergevin reported to and consulted with and everything else. And I don't know what qualifications Jeff Molson had to do that. Same as I don't know what qualifications Joey Saputo has to run a soccer team or what Gary Stern has to run a football team. You hire football people and soccer people and hockey people and you let them do their job as an owner. That's the way I'd think. And Jeff Molson, whether it was, I'm still not sure if it was his personal decision to step back or if it was pressure maybe from other owners and major sponsors after what happened with the Logan Mailloux fiasco, how it was mishandled afterwards. But whatever happened, Jeff Molson made a courageous decision to hire a unilingual American to run the Canadiens. Remember the front page of the Journal de Montréal the next day? Yeah. He knew he was going to take heat. He hired who he thought was the best hockey man available, and we've seen. Yeah.
And he was very smart not to name him a GM because he knew he would have taken heat for that. So he found a way.
He found a bilingual GM. It's just smart, right? But the most important first move in what's happening with the Canadiens was Jeff Molson taking a step back, and I think for the Alouettes and for the CF Montreal, whatever they're called now, would be for Joey Saputo to take a step back. And he basically drove a really good coach out of town. And for Gary Stern and whoever else owns the team to just step back and let the football people make the decisions and let the soccer people make the decisions and let the franchise move in that way.
We'll get to CF Montreal in just a second, but once again, I'm worried. Gary Stern is saying that they're willing to sell 10 to 90% to local interests. I mean, sell the whole team. Like this whole thing with the team belonging to the estate.
Yeah.
And, by the way, we talked about Gary, but if Gary alone wanted Mario Cecchini out, it wouldn't have happened. Obviously, he was able to convince members of the estate. It's the estate that wanted it, and that's why it happened. But this whole estate thing, it doesn't make sense. They shouldn't own the Montreal Alouettes, and they're trying to get closer to the business community and trying to get closer to the fans with a family that in an estate that lives out of Toronto and is not very present. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
You go back to when Larry Smith was running the Alouettes, and Larry was my boss for a while at the Gazette when he was publisher at the Gazette.
Yeah.
Larry knew the Montreal community and knew the Montreal business people, and that's how they ended up. A big reason why they ended up selling out Molson Stadium, getting those extra seats out, is Larry Smith knew the community. He knew how important it was to bring the French community into the Alouettes, because when I was talking about the Alouettes in the 70s, they were an English team. It was English Montreal supported the Alouettes. There wasn't a big Francophone. There was no French university football back then. At times, Larry Smith did a lot to change that and get that going that way. And I think that's why it's so important to have a local ownership group. And the way it is now with the estate or whatever, reminds me, remember that line in the Slapshot movie, who owns the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Nobody knew who owned the Chiefs, right? The Slapshot movie. And it's sort of like with the Alouettes. So who owns the Alouettes now? Like, who owns them? Well, Gary Stern's a guy on Twitter or whatever, but he's only a small percentage. It's the estate who's running. It's just sell the whole team, get a local ownership group in there, and try and get the Alouettes back to what they were when they were packing Molson Stadium all the time, adding seats, winning Grey Cups, and I'd love to see it happen. I think it's Montreal has become a Canadian city 12 months of the year, 7 days a week, and it's almost like a sickness that people cannot get enough of the Canadiens. But Montreal will be a much more healthy sports environment if the other teams. I mean, I was in Denver. Yes, Denver. The Nuggets played the night before. The Avalanche played the next day. There's so much sports going on. The Alouettes and CF Montreal are losing relevance in the city, and that's not a good thing for sports in Montreal.
No, it's not a good thing, and that's why and I just sent out a message to those who are watching right now, and I appreciate everyone watching and everyone supporting the podcast. See, a gentleman says Alouettes and soccer, boo, goodbye, block them. I don't want you part of the community.
But Tony, But that's the reality. It's the reality of Montreal and the Alouettes.
Well, I'm going to change it.
But Tony, don't blame the fans. Blame the Alouettes and CF Montreal for making them so. From a media standpoint, CF Montreal has been horrible to deal with as far as trying to get interviews, or it's harder to get an interview with somebody on CF Montreal than it is to get an interview with somebody on the Canadiens. That's a big problem.
It's much better now than it has been.
Yeah, but with the with the Alouettes, it's just when you don't operate your franchise well, people aren't going to care about it as much. So I don't blame Montreal sports fans for not caring as and rightly. I mean, the Gazette website, we write stories about CF Montreal. There are few people read. You can't force people to want to cheer for a team and want to go to games. You got to make them want to go.
Look, I understand that, but Stu, so we're gonna agree to disagree, and I agree with a lot of what you said. But here's something that I really believe. Okay, the media hasn't helped, Stu. The media wants to talk about the Montreal Canadiens 12 months a year.
No, the reason
365 days.
The reason why is because people read about the Canadiens, people watch the Canadiens, people listen to the Canadiens, and people don't read about the Alouettes or the Impact or whatever as much as they do. So it's just a simple. I mean, there was a day in the newspaper business when I was sports editor years ago. I think we had about 8 reporters. We had full-time guys on different things. Now we have 3 reporters, and it's the same not just at the Gazette. It's all sports media. So you're going to focus your coverage on what is going to attract the most readers or viewers.
But it's always, you're right. But it's always going to be the Canadiens.
When the Expos are still in town, I used to joke, and it was sort of joking, but it was probably true. If the Canadiens played a softball game at the Big O, they would have got more fans than the Expos were getting. They're getting like 5,000 fans, and it's a reality, and it's just the way this city is. It's but the Canadiens, but the Canadiens have also made them sell, when they had the 24CH and they had all these other things going on. And even when they weren't winning, people were interested in the Canadiens and people wanted to follow the Canadiens. So if your business, whatever it is, it's a sports team, or you're selling soft drinks, or you're selling beer, or whatever, if people don't want to buy it, or people aren't interested in it, they're not interested in it. You can't force
I think Montreal's a terrible sports town. Everyone talks Habs. Yeah. They only talk Habs. There's only so much you can talk about a fourth line and Michael Pezzetta and Jake Evans and Yoel Armia not scoring a goal. You say it, I say it, the other guy says it, the other girl says it, the other person says, when
the Impact went out and got DJ Drogba,
there's
never been a response to any athlete ever in Montreal history that got a welcome like he did at the airport. I remember covering Impact games. There was people lined up 4 deep behind the fence in the parking lot, yelling at him, trying to get a glimpse of him. It was a place to be, right? You wanted to be I know friends of mine had never been to a soccer game. They went to a soccer game because they wanted to watch DJ Drogba.
Yeah.
Most of my friends who are big sports fans couldn't name you one player on CF Montreal. Marco Di Vaio. I play hockey with a bunch of guys on Monday nights. We played for years at LCC. We used to go to a little bar restaurant on Monkland Avenue afterwards, have a couple of beers, something to eat. 15 of us, all sports guys, all Montreal sports fans. Marco Di Vaio, I got there, and he was sitting at a table in the back with some friends having wine or whatever, or something to eat. I noticed him. Oh, that's kind of cool. The second week we were there, he was there. Like 3 weeks in a row, he was there. So I said to all the guys at the table, you guys know who that is over there? Nobody had a clue. Nobody had a clue. Did they market him? They didn't market him when he was here.
Unfortunately, they did not do a good enough job in the past of marketing their stars.
Well, Marco Di Vaio couldn't walk down the street in Italy, I'm sure.
You're right.
Without being mobbed. And in Montreal, he could sit in a restaurant with 20 sports fans, hockey fans more than others, but sports fans, and they had no idea who he was.
You're right. But do you think
when DJ Drogba was with the Impact, I begged for a month to get a one-on-one interview with him to do a big feature story on him in the Gazette, and it didn't happen. I never got it. We couldn't do it. So is it the media's fault that we can't get an interview with a guy when we want to do a story with him? Or is it the team's fault with the way they handle it? Again, so I won't blame much. Sports fans can spend their money on whichever teams they want and go see whatever teams they want. If they're not interested in going to see the Alouettes and the Impact, it's up to them to make fans want to go. And when they brought Drogba in, fans wanted to go.
Yeah, look, I was lucky enough to have Marco Di Vaio in studio. Yes, it didn't happen right away. It took a while. I was lucky enough to interview Didier Drogba at the training facility. It happened very, very late in the season. It didn't happen as early as I wanted it to. And unfortunately for Alessandro Nesta, I was never able to interview him because
there you go. So whose fault is that? The media or the fans' fault?
I understand that. Now, but I have a question for you, though. As much as DeVio was good, very good, and as much as Drogba for that one season, the first season, he was great, okay? If you turned on sports radio, would you hear anyone talking about DeVio or Drogba? They would always talk about the Montreal Canadiens because if you're lazy, you can get away with talking about one team. That's it.
I disagree with you on that front, Tony. If you're we can monitor. I can tell you exactly how many people read any story on the Gazette website, or how much time they spent on it, how many people read it, what they read. If our website, if we write 5 Canadian stories, all 5 stories will be among the most 10 read stories on the entire website, not just sports, the entire website. So as media gets smaller, fewer people in the media, in sports media, just the way the business has gone, you're going to focus the smaller people you have. As I said, we used to have Randy Phillips used to cover university sports on almost a full-time beat for the Gazette back in the day when we had 12-page sports sections and 8 reporters. Times have changed. Business has changed. Realities have changed. And the media can't cover everything. So the media is going to cover what fans want to read about or what they want to watch about. So it's not, I don't think it's being lazy. I think it's just focusing the coverage on what people want to read and what people want to hear about and what people want to talk about. And Montreal, people want to read and people want to talk about the Canadiens. And it's up to the Alouettes and CF Montreal to give fans a reason to want to watch them. And the Alouettes have shown when the Alouettes win in this city, Canadiens are the only thing in this city where if people will follow them whether they win or lose. I wonder sometimes if there's more interest when they're losing or more interest when they're winning, because people get upset when they lose, people get happy when they win. And Montreal is such an event and star-driven town. The Grand Prix is massive. I've always said that if you interviewed fans going into the Grand Prix, 150,000, I bet you 3/4 of them couldn't name 4 F1 Formula One drivers. They go there because it's an event. Tennis is an event. It's something to go to. They make it appealing to go there. The Alouettes and CF Montreal need to make it appealing. And when they brought in Drogba, it was appealing. People wanted to go see him. They don't have a star player.
Look, I just think that a lot of people have an opinion about soccer. You're right. I can't change it. They don't want to change it. Hockey's bigger, faster, this, that, whatever. I got a message from someone a couple of days ago.
Let me just
hockey is so much better than soccer because it has fighting. Hockey is better than soccer because it has fighting.
Well, people are going to think that way, but let me put it this way. So your podcast or anybody's podcast, if you're talking about, I'm sure you can measure how many listeners or people are watching the show. If you spent the whole show talking about CF Montreal, and you saw, I don't know, I'll throw in 1,000 people watched, okay, and then you did a whole show talking about the Canadiens, and 10,000 people watched.
Well, I could tell you right now, we've done podcasts where we talked hockey and got 50,000 views, and talked soccer and got 500 views. You're right.
So now your sponsors, you need sponsors, right? Are your sponsors going to sponsor a show that has 500 viewers?
I understand, but if we stop talking soccer or talk about it not much because the numbers are so much less than hockey, we're always going to be a one sports city a one sports team in this city. It's never going to change.
And that's the reality. I don't think it ever is going to change. I think it's a reality.
Well, I'm gonna try so that it does for the benefit of all of us, so that all of us can have a job for as long as possible, because there's more teams to talk about, and so that we can give the listener and the viewer variety. We're talking about what car the Canadiens coach drives in the month of August.
Tony, you can't force viewers. You're gonna listen to me talk about soccer. You're gonna listen to me talk about soccer because I want you to listen to me talk about soccer. If they don't want it, they're gonna change the channel. It's like if we put stuff on our website that people are interested in reading, they're gonna go read another website somewhere else. So it's professional sports, they're businesses, and the Alouettes and CF Montreal have not been run well as businesses, whether they're a soccer team or a football team or a beer company or a T-shirt company. They haven't run their businesses well. And when you're in a market where you're already you got Goliath up here, the Canadiens, and you're David down here. You got to do everything right to try and get up to make yourselves relevant. And the Alouettes have been relevant when they're winning Grey Cups. And the impact was relevant when Drogba was here. I mean, I remember going to those games at Saputo Stadium. It was fun. It was great. It was. I mean, Saputo Stadium's always a fun place to go. I enjoy going there and watching the games, but it's a lot more fun when there's a star player that people know, a worldwide star. And again, there has never been DJ Drogba, and my personal dealings with him, I thought he was a jerk to deal with. Personally, that's the way I thought. I think a lot of media people did also. But he was a massive star, and people in this, he's the biggest sports star. The two biggest sports stars to be in Montreal or play in Montreal are Georges St. Pierre and DJ Drogba. Those are two guys. Carey Price can go leave. Carey Price went to China. Nobody would know who he was.
Of course not. Of course
they would know who Drogba was, and they know who Georges St. Pierre was, right? They're worldwide stars. And I look around MLS and you see star players come. I don't think there's a city anywhere in MLS that is more interested in having star players than Montreal. And you can look at what's happened in Toronto. The players that Toronto has brought in compared to what Montreal has brought in. And, the Saputos don't want to spend the money on the star players. But they have a lot of money. They don't want to spend money on the players. That's their choice. That's the way they run their business.
Well, and I understand that. And we know that getting a star player sells for sure. But, Toronto got 2 star players last year, and they invested more in those 2 players than CF Montreal did in their entire team. And Toronto didn't make the playoffs, and CF Montreal finished second, third overall. But
Toronto's more relevant. TFC is more relevant in Toronto than FC Montreal is in Montreal.
Yes, noted. But I'll make the argument that Toronto's a much better sports city than Montreal is. Montreal's once again, Montreal's a one-team city. It's not a sports city.
It's also part of that's business-wise too, Tommy. There's so much business, so much money in Toronto that they can afford season tickets for the Raptors and the Blue Jays and the Leafs and the CF Montreal. I mean, the Canadiens in the Montreal economy, in the Montreal market, the Canadiens suck up most of the corporate money for season ticket sales and whatnot, and that's a big problem for the other teams. Yeah. Also, but I remember when the Impact played Toronto in I guess it was the Eastern Final, maybe 5-6 years ago, and I remember I went to Toronto to cover the game.
With Bernier, yeah.
And a buddy of mine told me there was a pub, I can't remember, it was the Lions Den.
Biello coaching.
Yeah, Biello was coaching, that's right. And it was the pub near the stadium, what's the name of the stadium where Toronto plays? I can't remember.
BMO
Field.
Yeah.
Maybe a 20-minute walk from BMO Field. So my buddy who lives in Toronto told me, before you go to the game, you got to go to this pub and see the scene there. So I go to the pub. I get there.
Remember what it's called? You remember the name?
It's the Lions something. Lions Den or Lions. If you do it, maybe search TFC pub or home pub. It's Lions something. Anyway, I went there. Yeah. And I got there maybe 4 hours before the game.
There's the Lions Den Bar and Grill on James Street.
That's the place then.
Okay.
So I went there. I got there maybe 4 hours before the game. I was having lunch. And then all of a sudden, all the TFC people started coming in. And they all had on the sweaters. And they all had on the scarves. And what really struck me is that, 1, how young they were. 2, how many women there were. 3, how many different ethnic groups there were.
Yeah.
They all had either a scarf or a shirt or both or a jacket. They were decked out in red. They're there. They're having a party. They're having beers. They're having food. Then, about an hour before the game, they all march to the stadium together. They got flares going. It was awesome. It was this is so cool.
Yeah.
Why doesn't CF Montreal try and create something like that? An environment where it's fun for fans to go before the game. Why don't they have somewhere outside the stadium where there's
they started a tailgate, but they don't. It's not the greatest. It's not the greatest.
But again,
area.
So if you're,
I wish it would have been downtown.
That's a big reason why TFC is popular with fans. It's a fun thing to go. It's not just the game.
Yeah,
it's before the game and after the game. So I mean, I walked with this group up to. I think I mentioned in my story that I wrote that day. I walked them up and I said, "This is really cool. This is a team that's created and young, as I said, diverse.
Yeah,
a lot of women that were obviously TFC fans, and they were spending money not only on tickets but on scarves and sweaters and everything else. So that is a well-run sports franchise.
But
and
I'm going to tell you,
more of an impact in Toronto than CF Montreal has in Montreal.
I'm going to tell you something that does give me a lot of pleasure, Stu. All right. And I'm really happy about this, is that we've been talking about the Alouettes and CF Montreal now probably for the last half hour and talked about the Canadiens for the first 40 minutes of the show. Okay. Between YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, we probably have a good 500 people watching right now, which is kind of cool. So it just goes to show that there are some fans that want to hear about all the sports. And you know what? Time flies when you're having fun, Stu. I can't believe you were about to go out tonight in Dallas, and I kept you on for an hour and 10 minutes now talking. Like it's
a lot warmer than it is outside here. I'll tell you that for sure.
I have no idea the way the time flew tonight, but it kind of reminded me of when I was in studio and actually hosting my own show. Get to talk Montreal Canadiens, get to talk Montreal Alouettes, get to talk CF Montreal, get to talk fans, have a debate, have a discussion. I don't know if you and I have ever actually disagreed on more points than we did tonight. It was kind of cool.
That's great. That's as I said when readers read my columns and they say I totally disagree. That's great. That's perfect. That's fine. Start the debate.
Sports is a matter of opinion, right?
It's respect each other and respect. I respect your opinion. You respect my opinion. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Hey, a shout out.
Hopefully you learned something from what I say, and I know I learned stuff from what you say. So it's all good.
100%. A shout out to Ericsson Audio, the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro's Tascam equipment is supplied by Ericsson Audio, the choice of musicians, engineers, and broadcast professionals. I won't keep you much longer.
But again, just to follow up on what you were saying, you and I enjoyed talking the Alouettes with you. I enjoyed talking CF Montreal with you. I enjoyed talking Canadiens with you, but you can't force people to stay listening. If somebody decides you're talking soccer, I don't want to listen anymore. That's if they decide to change the channel.
I hear you, but I
can't force people to be interested in something.
No, you can't. You're right, but and at the same time, though, I'm not going to be dictated by, hey, you talk hockey or else I'm tuning out. Well, if that's if that's the way you want to handle it, I mean, I like for everyone to stick around as well, but I'm going forward, I don't want this to be a one sport channel. Why? Because I care about our city too much. I don't want our city just to be a one sports team because we already lost one sports team. Yeah. I don't want to lose a second, and I certainly don't want it to be a third after.
Yeah.
And
the way things are going, that could become a reality. I mean, the ownership of, as I say, the Saputos have more money than, I think the football, the soccer team's a toy for them. The Alouettes is not necessarily the same situation. But moving forward, it'd be interesting to see what happens with the ownership of the Alouettes. When Robert Wettenhall was owning the team, it was a toy for him, right? He was a really rich guy who liked owning a sports team, and it was sort of he had fun running it. It's like when George Gillette bought the Canadiens; it was sort of a toy for him, right? He saw a good business opportunity, bought the team. He was a huge fan, and that's the way he went about it. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Alouettes ownership thing. I agree with you. I think they need to get a local ownership group in here.
Yeah.
People understand them. Montreal's a unique market, and part of understanding that unique market is understanding how powerful the Canadiens are and how much they dominate the landscape as far as media. And the reason they dominate the media landscape is because that's what fans want to read about, want to listen about, and want to talk about. So you got to work to make fans want to be interested in your product.
If I was Jeff Molson, I'd buy the Alouettes.
I don't think that would happen. It'd be a sort of competition for his other business, but they sort of need. There's football people in town that were interested the last time that Alouettes were up for sale to buy the team.
A lot of the Alouettes.
It might not be one really rich guy, but it's a group of 5 or 6 rich guys who combined have enough money to own the team. And the thing for business guys, successful business people have they have a bit of an ego, probably. They're successful people. They get talked about a lot more when they own a sports franchise, right? They're sort of if Jeff Molson only owned Molson or only ran Molson, people wouldn't talk about him that much, right? They talk about him a lot because he owns the Canadiens. Mark Cuban, people talk about him a lot more so because he owns sports teams than just because he owns a business. And I think for a lot of really rich businessmen, that's part of why they want to own a sports team.
Yeah. When you say competition, though, for Jeff Molson, yes and no, because the season runs from like June to the end of October, and the hockey season actually starts at the beginning of October. Yes, there's preseason games, but at most, Both sports would be going on at the same time for what, 4 or 5 Alouettes games? Not more than that. So
whoever the new ownership group for the Alouettes is, I'll give them one piece of advice. And I'm saying this as a fan who took his son to a couple Alouettes games this year, paid for my tickets, went to the games, went to the concession stand, and was shocked how much they were charging for a beer and a hot dog and stuff. I was like, I think it was like $13 or something for beer. I was like, really? And the thing is, we couldn't talk about the Canadiens again. The Canadiens can get away with that because so much of the season tickets are corporate tickets at the Bell Center, right? So I have my own company, Tony. I have 2 season tickets, 5 rows behind the Canadiens bench. They're $300 a pop or whatever they are. I give them to you, Tony. Take one of your sons, take your wife, go to the game, have a great night. You didn't pay for the tickets, right? You go to the game. A beer is $15. That's all right. I didn't pay for the tickets. I'll pay $15. I'll drop $150 on beer and hot dogs or whatever. So I didn't pay for the tickets. The Alouettes, most people going to the Alouettes games paid for their tickets. So you paid for your tickets and you get there, and then they're charging you $12 for a beer and $5 for a hot dog and whatever. And the team is, and you're like, you know what? I don't think I'm going back. So if I was running the Alouettes, I'd have some kind of a package where you get a beer and a hot dog or something for $10, or you get your kid can get 2 hot dogs and a bag of chips for a reasonable price. And I think that would be a big business step for them, because people go to the game with whatever disposable income they have, right? So if you have $40 to spend and you get 2 beers for $40 or whatever, you're not very likely to go back. But if you can get, for $40, you can get your kid a couple of hot dogs and a bag of chips and a Coke and yourself a beer and enjoy the day, you're probably going to go back. And you're going to spend the same $40. So to me, if I was to give one piece of advice to the Alouettes as someone who went to a couple of games this year and paid for my tickets and paid for my beers and paid for everything else, I would say make your concession stands a little bit more affordable, and you might get more family. One of the games I went to with my son this year, it was like 35 degrees. It was so hot. It was so hot, and we were sitting corner seats in the end zone, and there's a family of 4 in front of us. And I might be wrong, but I think they were charging $5.75 for a bottle of water. Yeah. And he in front of me with his wife and his 2 kids. They were dying in the heat. He came back with 4 bottles of water, and I said, that guy just spent like $30 for 4 bottles of water. What are the odds he's going to bring his family back to another game? Probably pretty slim, I would think. So
unless he's got a lot of money. Yeah, $23 on 4 bottles of water.
Yeah. But it was so hot. It was so hot, Tony. It was like not an option. And the other thing they do,
I got to tell you, out of all the
other thing they do at Molson, and my son, because I bought him a bottle of water at one point. Yeah. We went to the bathroom, but in the sinks there, the water runs warm, so you can't refill your water bottle if you want to get a drink from the. So to me, it's just like that sort of. As a paying fan going to a game, that I found was a little much.
I understand that a lot of businesses make a lot of money at concession stands, especially movie theaters. But I have to tell you, when I go to sporting events, out of everything to buy there, it's the price for water that bothers me the most, because I know that if I go to the grocery store, I can buy 24 to 28 bottles of water for anywhere between $3.99 and $4.99.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, the price of one bottle at a concession stand at a game is probably about 75% more than a case of 28. It really bothers me.
And when it's a different fan going to an Alouettes game than it is the fan going to the Canadiens game.
Yeah. Hey, in ending, in a minute if you can, because I've already taken up a lot of your time. Did you have a chance to see CF Montreal's presser today announcing Hernan Losada?
I just read
head coach.
I didn't. I read Herb's. I was at the airport all day today. My flight was supposed to leave at 9:20 from Denver, and it left at 2 in the afternoon. I read Herb's story on it before I went on the air with you here. So I just know what I read from the stories. I didn't see that.
I think he put a lot of people at ease though, because right away he came in, addressed everyone in French. In a pretty good French, as a matter of fact, and I think that made a lot of people happy. Number one, of members of the media that were there, because if they're not getting their clips in French, chances are they're not going to end up playing the clips on their show, because then they would have to translate, and then it's too much work. You see when I tell you that some of the media is spoiled here in the city?
I was hoping I was personally hoping they were going to bring Mauro Biello back.
Wouldn't be surprised if he was in the mix.
Because I from when I was covering them and Mauro was the coach, I had a lot of respect for Mauro. I thought he was I'm not a soccer tactician, so as far as his coaching abilities, I mean, he got a team that went well in the playoffs. He also showed big you-know-whats when he benched DJ Drogba. Remember that?
Yeah. I remember that. That was in the second season, yeah.
Italian boy from NDG benching a world superstar player. And I asked what he said. He had to. It just wasn't going over well in the locker room. And then they won after he did that. So when they got rid of Mauro, I was like, here's a local guy who understands the market, trilingual, I'm sure is Italian, English, French, great with the media.
Yeah.
A local guy, gets the market, understands everything.
Yeah.
Had success with the team, and then they got rid of him. And I was like, that surprised me when they made that move.
He played Matteo Mancosu ahead of Drogba, but at that point, Piatti was rocking and rolling though, like he was one of the best players in the league.
But for Mauro, I mean, you know a lot more about soccer than I do, Tony. But I was sort of hoping they would bring Mauro back, and I think it would have been a good move for the team as far as for the media, as far as having a coach people know. How many people in Montreal know who this coach is?
Unless you're not too many.
Unless you're a big, I'd never heard of him before.
I mean, he coached in Belgium, second division for 15 months, and he coached DC United in the MLS for 15 months. As not too many people know about him, but you know what? He comes in. He said he played as a number 10 for about 15 years, offensive player. He likes offensive soccer. Olivier Renard said that he remembers the two games they played versus DC United with Losada coaching. They tied one, and DC United won the other one. And in both games, DC United had about 20 shots to Montreal's 4 or 5, and he says they were totally dominated with what Renard thought was an inferior roster. So anyway, he said a lot of good things today.
To stay on that point, people don't know who he is. The average Montreal sports fan, as I said, with DeVio being at the restaurant, have no idea who most of these guys on the Impact are. And you're talking about the media. A couple of summers ago, before COVID, I started doing a feature. It was My Montreal. And it was sitting down with Montreal athletes and not talking about sports, but what do you like most about the city? I did one on Georges Larac with his vegan restaurant.
Yeah. I saw that. I remember that.
And I did one with Evan Bush, goalie.
Yeah.
With the Impact.
Yeah.
And he had a little favorite coffee shop he liked out in Point Claire Village. And we went out there. Yeah. And the Impact PR guy felt
he's a great chat, by the way. He's a great chat.
Evan Bush, one of my favorite athletes I've ever dealt with in any sport. Really good guy. And the Impact PR guy showed up because he was afraid I might ask some kind of, who knows. Anyway, but I went well. And if people who are interested, if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And I met his kids afterwards, and we did a nice video of his kids having ice. Just a really nice human interest story. Good for us, good for the Gazette. It's something a little bit different, showing an American guy talked about how he came here, he lived here year round, his kids were learning French. Just a nice sort of human interest story, right? And letting Montreal fans know about somebody who doesn't play for the Canadiens, what he's like. Good all around, right? I tried to do 2 or 3 more, and the Impact wouldn't make guys available to me. So you know what? All right. So it's easy to blame the media, Tony, but we did one and everything went well. There was no complaints. And then I think I asked to get the coach and I asked to get another player, and it was like, no. And then, this guy's available. Well, nobody knows it. No, it was anyway. So it was just it's another case of it's easy to just say, the media doesn't cover this, the media doesn't cover that. There's sometimes a lot of stories in the background that go along with it.
I hear you. Did you always get interviews for the Canadiens?
The Canadiens. It's easier to get an interview with the Canadiens than it is to get an interview with. You go to I didn't cover CF Montreal this year. I think I maybe did one game. Herb and Pat did most of them. But you go to one of their practices and they bring out 2 players and the coach. So everybody gets the exact same quotes. Everybody gets the same story. Nobody gets anything different. You go to Canadiens practice, you can talk to whoever you want.
I hear you.
I always try and talk to the guy that nobody else is talking to, so I get something different.
Of course.
So there's much more access at a Canadiens practice to players than there, or after a game even, than there is at Montreal soccer team game.
Yeah, listen, hopefully President Gabriel Gervais is paying attention, and he's a pretty smart guy, and maybe they can make some of those necessary changes. Stu, I don't know how to thank you. A couple of days before Christmas Eve in Dallas, when you could have gone out to stay back in the hotel to talk to me for about an hour and 20 minutes now, I'm actually blown away. I'm very appreciative, Stu. I want to take this opportunity to wish you a very Merry Christmas. So I guess you're covering the game in Dallas tomorrow. And
yes, if you want to do something for me, Tony, if you want to do something for me, put out some good wishes, and maybe I'll get my flight home Christmas Eve. Because right now, the way the weather is, I'm hoping, my wife's hoping I can get home for Christmas Eve. So my flight's supposed to be at 11 o'clock, I think, out of Dallas.
I hope
home at 4. So hopefully that all works out.
I hope you will, Stu, not only so that you can see your wife and you can see your son and you can see your daughter, but you can see your dogs, which includes a beautiful lab, which I think you picked up a couple of
Yes,
weeks ago,
we adopted her about a week before I left. So my wife and my kids have been absolutely fantastic. She's an 11-month-old puppy. Her name's Missy. She lost an eye. That's how she ended up at Rosie Animal Adoption. If anybody was ever looking to adopt an animal, I cannot recommend Rosie Animal Adoption enough. They're on Facebook. She'd been up for adoption for quite a while. You know how much I love dogs, Tony. And
yeah.
Near Christmas, and I said to my wife, somebody's got to adopt this dog. I've had a black lab before. They're the best dogs in the world. They're so smart. We adopted her. She's fantastic. My wife and kids have been taking care of her. This week, I'm looking forward to getting home, see my wife, see my kids, and see our new dog also.
That's great. Stu, we're going to keep our fingers crossed for you, and that you'll be able to get back home to your family on Christmas Eve, and that everyone watching, you'll be able to enjoy Christmas Eve with your family as well. Thanks, Stu. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and your family, Tony, and get better.
Thank you. That's a deal. All right. Look, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you once again for all the support. It's about 2 years now, and I think we're getting bigger and better every day. And truth be told, I wasn't 100% tonight. I wasn't 90%. I wasn't even 80%. I'm probably about 50%. I'm pretty much getting through the whole thing just like on adrenaline. And I'm talking because if I don't talk, I'll make a fool of myself. But it's going to be our last show before Christmas. I think we're going to take off for a couple of days. And so I really wanted to be a part of it so I can wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. I don't know if we can bring Agnello and Sammy on now because it's late, and I don't know if they're wearing their PJs or not, but if I can, guys, if you can come on.
What's up, Tony?
There we go. Okay. I was wondering if you, all right. Okay. You're still there. Good. No PJs on. Agnello, you got the brains of the operation there to your side. What are we doing here over the next couple of days? Are we going to?
We're going to go on tomorrow night. Hopefully you come on with Matt, and then we're going to take a couple of days off, and we'll come back on the 28th and 29th when the Habs play again.
All right, okay. So we're back tomorrow. Okay, yep. Good. All right.
Yeah, the Habs play tomorrow night, and then we have the Habs the 28th and the 29th.
Yes, the 28th and the 29th. All right. So, yeah. So Matt's scheduled to be. I'll make an appearance tomorrow. Yeah, I'll join Matt.
Yeah.
No problem.
Matt said you owe him anyway, so.
I owe him, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I owe him. I don't have a problem with that. You want to know why?
Why?
Because this doesn't seem like work to me because I love doing it.
Exactly.
All right, so why don't we do that tomorrow night, same time, same place. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow night, one more night, and then we're going to take a couple of days off during the Christmas holidays, and then we'll return again on the Wednesday. So be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Be true to yourself. I always am. I'm Marinaro. Tell your friends about it. Say the podcast and the host. It's pretty sick. It's funny to think that I actually was really sick for the last 4 or 5 days. I always knew I was sick, but now I was really sick. Anyway, have a good night.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different, 8.6, intense by nature, and La Cage. If the last time you went to La Cage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to La Cage. The menu will surprise you.